In this video, we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first, we're going to talk about massive drone strike that took place during the previous night. I would like to remind you that today is the Independence Day of Ukraine, first of all, which means that most likely we're going to see a lot of very interesting updates and details. So once again, Ukrainians launched a massive drone strike. They started this attack yesterday on the 23rd of August of 2025, somewhere around 2 p.m. The Russians are saying that between the 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. of Russian time, they managed to bring down 32 drones. Later, the Ukrainians launched another wave of attack that lasts from 5 p.m. till 11 p.m. of Moscow time, and during that period of time, the Russians bring down another 57 drones. And this morning, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that during the previous night, between the 11 p.m. and let's say, I believe that's 8 a.m. of Moscow time, the Russians destroyed additional 95 drones. So that was one of the biggest drone attacks carried out by Ukrainians. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian resources published this map where we could see the routes of attacks of Ukrainian drones. And of course, we were waiting for the results of this attack, whether the Ukrainians managed to damage anything or not. And by the morning of the 24th of August of 2025, several pro-Ukrainian resources reported that during the previous night, the Ukrainians managed to destroy a lot of objects of energy facilities. One of the objects of energy facilities that was destroyed is located in the vicinity of the city by the name of St. Petersburg in the northern part of the Russian Federation. So this is the video that was published by pro-Ukrainian resources, and here we can see the facility that was damaged, and as you can see, most likely not just damaged but even destroyed. Huge fire, a very powerful fire, and the Ukrainians are saying that this is Novatek gas concentrate complex. The Russians use this complex to sell gas to Europe, probably to other countries in the world. So very important energy facility, gas facility in the Russian Federation. But the question is, but not just one, but several questions I have. First of all, when talking about this map, we see that Ukrainian drones mainly were flying in the direction of the city of Moscow, in the eastern direction and in the southeastern direction. So, according to this map, we have no roads in the northern direction. Furthermore, very interesting is the distance. According to just raw calculations of possible, let's say, route of Ukrainian attack, the distance between the northern part of Ukraine and this gas storage, this gas facility, is around 900 kilometers. And if you ask my opinion, I believe that Ukrainians didn't attack this gas facility from the territory of Ukraine. As I understand, Ukrainians attacked this gas facility from the Baltic Sea. First, Ukrainians, using probably drones or Navy drones, managed to get as close as possible to the Russian Federation. And let's say somewhere from this area, the Ukrainians launched drones and attacked this gas storage. So this is exactly that Ukrainians were training and exercising in the Black Sea. If you remember, during the August, we got lots of very interesting updates that Ukrainians carry out several exercises on the territory of the Black Sea using the same tactics. First, they were trying to get as close as possible the shore or the bank of Crimea or of Kinburn Spit with drones, and later from the drones, from these, let's say, Navy drones, the Ukrainians attacked deep inside of the territory and the control of the Russian Federation with different FPV drones. So we believe that this is exactly the schema that the Ukrainians use in the Baltic Sea and in the vicinity of the city by the name of St. Petersburg. First, they got as close as possible to this gas storage facility, and then they attacked this territory with drone. Or the Ukrainians used another tactics with buses, with trucks, with drones on board as well, because I'm not sure that Ukrainians attacked this territory from the territory of Ukraine. Or another option, the Ukrainians could attack this gas storage from the territory of one of the European countries, either from the territory of Finland or from the territory of Estonia. I believe that during the upcoming 24 hours, we're gonna get additional information. We will understand for sure how exactly the Ukrainians attacked this very important object of gas facilities, of gas infrastructure on the territory of the Russian Federation. Now let's move to the territory to Ukraine, and let's discuss the situation on the ground. And first, let's talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation from two sides. The armored force of the Russian Federation resumed their offensive operation in the direction of the settlement by the name of Stepnogorsk. Additional changes on the ground were recorded, and as you can see, this information was provided by pro-Ukrainian resources. During the previous months, the Ukrainians counterattacked in this area with the purpose to restore control over some territories, and we got reports that as a result of previous counterattacks, the Ukrainians managed to return back to the city of Kamensk. But now we see that after a short regrouping, the Russians launched another wave of offensive operation, and as we can see, by the beginning of the 24th of August of 2025, the Russians are about to finish the battle for the settlement of Plavny, and the Russians improved their positions significantly in the fields and to the northeast of the settlement of Kamensk itself. So we expect that these coming days, the Russians will continue their offensive operation with the purpose to secure the village of Plavny completely, to create a stable foothold in the southern part of the city of Stepnogorsk, which will allow the Russians to continue offensive operation further, either in the northern direction or in the northeastern direction, with the purpose to outflank the city of Orekhov from the west and from the northwest. At the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of the Zaporizhzhia from the east. During the previous 24 hours, some changes were recorded in the area of the western Donetsk. According to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions around the village of Kamyshovaha. This information was provided by pro-Ukrainian mappers. Furthermore, different military analysts and experts reported that the Russians launched their major offensive operation, as we discussed during the previous videos, and the Russians continue advancing. And despite the fact that Ukrainians launched their counter-offensive operation in the area of the villages of Andreevka, Klivtsovo, Zrenogai, this counter-offensive operation didn't stop the Russians and didn't force the Russians to reject their plans to move further. I would like to remind you that the Russians have just two tasks in this area. The first task is to get as close as possible and to cut physically the river of Yanchul. This is the river that goes between the settlements by the name of Заря, Вишнева, Егоровка, Привилье, Заря, Рубне, further Uspenovka, Okhotная, Poltavka, and Malinovka. So this is the river, and this is the first task of the armed force of the Russian Federation. The next task of the Russians is to move further and to get another river in this area between the cities of Guliai-Polye and the city of Pokrovsk. So we are talking this time about the river by the name of Khaychul. So these are two rivers that the Russians are tasked to take under control, and currently the group of forces east are tasked to repeat their offensive operation. Several months ago, they carried out in the Ugledar direction. If you remember, the Russians were also advancing from the east in the western direction, and the main Russian task was to cut the road TO 524 between the cities of Ugledar and the settlement of Konstantinovka. And when the Russians cut this road physically, the entire defense of the armed forces securing this area collapsed almost automatically. Now the Russians are trying to do the same. The Russians are at the beginning of this path, obviously, but the main purpose of them is to cut the road PR85 between the cities of Pokrovsk and the city of Guliai-Polye. If Russians cut this road physically, we believe that here we can see the same story as we used to see in the area of the city of Ugledar. The inside defense of the Zaporizhzhia direction will collapse automatically, and the Russians will be able to move further with the purpose to outflank and to attack from behind the city of Orekhov and furthermore the city of Guliai-Polye. So the inside Zaporizhzhia direction currently depends on Russian offensive operation from the east, and most likely due to this situation, Ukrainians will intensify their attempts to counterattack deeper in the vicinity of the N15 road towards the settlements of Podubne, Kamar, probably even with the purpose to cross the river of Mokry Yali and to begin probably, let's say, another full-scale offensive towards the settlement of Kurakhova from Ukrainian side. This is the only option, this is the only way how Ukrainians can stop the armed forces of the Russian Federation. But telling the truth, I'm not sure that this counter-offensive operation Ukrainians are able to carry out due to shortage of manpower and supply and support from the Western countries due to problems with intelligence. The only thing that Ukrainians can do is to carry out very short tactical counterattacks along the line of combat contact. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. As for now, the Russians probably realized the risks of the Ukrainian presence in the area of Ivanovka. They continue bombing and attacking the settlement. Most likely, the Russians will bring additional forces in this direction with the purpose to stabilize the situation and to restore control over the villages they lost during the previous weeks. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation around the city of Pokrovsk and the Pokrovsk agglomeration. The situation here is very strange, weird, and interesting. I would like to remind you that just yesterday we discussed that according to several more or less reliable pro-Russian resources, the armed forces of the Russian Federation launched their offensive operation in the eastern part of the city of Pokrovsk. And as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly by taking under control lots of trenches, strongholds, and fortifications in this area. Furthermore, according to this map, according to several pro-Russian resources, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to create several cauldrons. The several groups of Ukrainian forces were caught without any chances for evacuation. So this is the information that we discussed yesterday. Also, we had lots of videos of how Russians were bombing and attacking the temporary deployment points of the armed forces of Ukraine along the line of combat contact. And yesterday, it seemed that the Russians were about to completely break through Ukrainian defense and almost gets to the city of Kiev from this area. But later we start receiving very strange and weird reports, this time from pro-Ukrainian sources. As of the beginning of the 24th of August of 2025, it's still unclear whether these updates are correct or it's just, let's say, an attempt to create another media victory from the Ukrainian side and to ruin Russia's plans. So what happened during the previous night? First, we start receiving reports that some sabotage and reconnaissance group, but this time from Ukrainian side, managed to break through Ukrainian defense, the Russian defense, and to get as deep as possible in the area of the settlements of Myrne and Malinovka. So Ukrainians stated and pro-Russian resources confirmed that several sabotage and reconnaissance groups using these roads of attack, these roads of redeployment, managed to answer the villages of Myrne and managed to answer the village of Malinovka. So Ukrainians tried to repeat the same thing as the Russians did during the Russian breakthrough operation to the northeast of the settlement of Pokrovsk and the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration. So these Ukrainians tried to repeat the same that the Russians did several days ago in the area of the villages of Zolotoy Kolodец, Veselye, Novovodyanna, Petrovka. Ukrainians did the same, and not just did the same, we have proofs. For example, in this video that was published by the Russian resources dated to 22nd of August of 2025, we can see another group of Ukrainian forces. There are 3 soldiers in this area that were moving exactly along this tree line towards the village by the name of Myrne. Later, we got another report. For example, in this video, we can see how 2 Russian soldiers were complaining about very difficult situation on the ground in the area of Myrne. They said that they are under very heavy fire and the very heavy attacks from the armed forces of Ukraine, that there are just 2 of them who survived from their group. The rest were wounded or more from Ukrainian side, that they asked for evacuation, but the Russian commanders ordered them to stay there, and if they retreat, the Russians will multiple them for 0. And later we got another report that as a result of this offensive operation, the Ukrainians managed to capture several soldiers of the armed force of the Russian Federation from the western part of the settlement of Malinovka. So as for now, once again, I'm not for sure whether this is a real attack or media attack when Ukrainians are trying to show the Russians that they also can send deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation or territories controlled by the Russian forces with sabotage and reconnaissance group, or this offensive operation is indeed took place and this is something like a breakthrough with the purpose to cut Russians in the area of breakthrough between the settlements of Novoekonomichno, Razno, Novotoretska, Vladimirovka. I believe that we need to pay attention to this situation because obviously this is very strange and very weird situation. At the same time, pro-Russian resources reported that they continue offensive operations towards the Shakhovo pocket. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded and provided by several pro-Russian and very reliable resources. According to information we have, the Russians managed to get as close as possible to the settlement of Sofiivka, and currently the distance between the armored forces of the Russian Federation, their edge positions in this direction, and the settlement of Sofiivka itself is already less than 2 kilometers, just 1 kilometer and 500 meters, which is already nothing. So it seems that the Sofiivka pocket is about to be taken by the Russians, and this might happen in coming days or maybe even in coming hours. As for the Konstantinovka direction, there are still very heavy clashes. Today, several additional pro-Russian resources adjusted their maps in this area, coloring the territory of Kliban-Byk and territory to the south of Kliban-Byk water reservoir as a territory under Russian control. Furthermore, today we got additional videos of how the Russians began offensive operation, assault operations towards the next, let's say, dense network of the fortifications along N20 road that goes in the direction of the city of Konstantinovka itself. So now the Russians are trying to finish the battle for this territory and to take on the complete control every single trench, every single fortification and stronghold that lays between the cities and villages of Yablunovka, Alexandra, Kalinova and the city of Konstantinovka itself. So it seems that the Russians are planning to begin offensive operation with the purpose to improve their positions as much as possible in the area of the settlement of Berestok, so to answer the city of Konstantinovka from the southwest as well. I would like to remind you that during the previous days, the Russians managed to answer the city of Konstantinovka from the southeast. Now the Russians make attempts to attack the city of Konstantinovka from the northeast, and now we see additional activities of the armored force of the Russian Federation in the southwestern direction as well. So the active phase of the storm of the city of Konstantinovka is about to start. Now let's discuss the situation in the Liman direction. The situation is critical, and this information was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian resources. The Russians managed to establish complete control over the Serebryanka forest. This information was confirmed for the first time by pro-Ukrainian resources. The Ukrainians were forced to fall back, but there are still several pockets of resistance. Now the Ukrainians are trying to organize their evacuation from the pocket between the settlements of Serebryanka, Yampol and the Serebryanka forest, but the Russians see the movements and the redeployments of the armored forces of Ukraine, so that is why the Russians are bombing and attacking this territory with everything they have. So it seems that the battle for this territory is coming to the logical end, and the battle of Siversk may start in coming days. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes.